A polluter pays up, with the dollars going right into the communities affected. A nationwide reckoning over sexual harassment and sexual assault in the beer industry is echoing through Colorado. After fire, nature is healing with the help of humans.
It's really critical to get some cover on the slopes to prevent erosion, debris flows, flooding.
Humans and helicopters. And this, too, is an overhead look at a return to normal in Colorado. And it's next. Colorado celebrates its craft beer industry, cheers the economic impact of the craft beer business. You've seen those stories here and elsewhere. Let's talk now about the toxic culture within the industry for women. Sexual harassment, sexual assault. It's all being laid bare this week in an online movement that is sharing hundreds of women's stories demanding change and accountability. It's leading prominent brewers to step down or apologize. Steve Steger talked with two women, leaders in Colorado's craft beer industry, who say this is not surprising and it's time for it to be addressed.
The post from a female brewer in a different state was simple.
She said, next up, what sexist comments have you experienced?
A question.
Okay, but where's the person in charge here? You can't be it, you're a woman.
That within days had thousands of answers.
Because at the beginning it was just comments that people have experienced, and then it sort of morphed into something bigger than that.
Betsy Lay owns Lady Justice Brewing.
I don't think any woman who read through those stories was surprised.
So I always give them a pre-rinse and then scrub them.
Bess Doherty has brewed in Denver for 9 years, most recently at Ratio Beer Works in Rhino.
Anyone, especially who works in the industry, who is saying they're surprised and shocked by this, their eyes haven't been open. Women can't brew because they can't lift heavy things, can't keep up, can't manage their time.
Both women have heard the snide comments from men in taproom.
We get a lot of people who don't believe that I know how to brew.
Are you one of those hired promo girls? Do you drink beer?
Wondering if our yeast came from our female anatomy.
It got incredibly difficult for me.
Bess can relate to the even darker side of being a woman in this male-dominated field where alcohol flows freely.
I've lost count of how many times at events and festivals I've been groped by people in the industry and people outside of the industry, up to and including like being raped by a former coworker. And it's one of those impossible feeling situations because all the boys stick together. This is their house, and I'm coming in.
Both Bess and Betsy say they've been talking about this for years.
We still don't necessarily have an organized effort to make these changes in the beer industry yet.
It just makes me want to burn it all down and change it and actually make it the inclusive industry that it touts itself to be.
The latest reckoning.
I didn't know girls liked beer, which is...
might be the first step to get the industry to pay attention.
And so I think now that it's hard to ignore this, it's time to make some change.
Growing up, I remember never being able to figure out if I wanted to get into art or science. And then I found this, and it's this beautiful blend of art and science, and I'm good at it, and I love it. And I'm gonna fight for it. This is our industry, too.
For Next, I'm Steve Steger.
The Brewers Association, based out of Boulder, is being criticized this week for not doing enough to help. They told us today that they are working on providing resources to brewers and other industry employees. Both Betsy and Bess told us there needs to be a better way to report misogyny and misconduct and to hold people accountable for it. A Space Force commander at Buckley is being forced to give his command some space. Lieutenant Colonel Matthew Lohmeyer is out of his post for publishing and promoting a book suggesting that the military is being infiltrated by Marxism and that diversity training creates conflict. Marshall Zellinger looks at the First Amendment rights of Coloradans who serve.
A high-ranking Space Force commander at Buckley Air Force Base is no longer in command.
Our diversity, inclusion, and equity industry and the trainings we're receiving in the military via that industry are rooted in critical race theory, which is rooted in Marxism.
This is Lieutenant Colonel Matthew Lohmeyer being interviewed in an online podcast about a book he just self-published saying the military is rooted in Marxism. During the podcast, he talked about problems he had with extremism training he had to lead.
All of the examples that were given in that 70-page booklet had to do with not last year, 2020, and the destruction of cities and people's civil liberties.
Right.
The talking points had to do with various odd examples of white nationalists that have been caught at some point in the last decade and punished for it and kicked out of the military.
Last week, he was relieved of his duty as commander. A Space Force spokesperson provided a statement saying it was due to loss of trust and confidence in his ability to lead. This decision was based on public comments made by Lieutenant Colonel Lohmeyer in a recent podcast. Lieutenant General Stephen Whiting, the Space Force Command commander, has initiated an investigation on whether these comments constituted prohibited partisan political activity. A military spokesperson provided me this Department of Defense policy which might come into play: clearance of DoD information for public release. DoD personnel, while acting in a private capacity and not in connection with their official duties, may prepare information for public release through non-DoD venues or media. Such activity may not have an adverse effect on duty performance or the authorized functions of the DoD.
I tried reaching Lohmeyer by phone and through an email on his website. I've not heard back. He was on Sean Hannity's show last night on Fox News, and it appears, Kyle, the best way to sell a book is through the publicity of getting in trouble for writing a book and talking about it on conservative podcasts and opinion shows, because his book right now is number 3 on Amazon's bestsellers list.
Yes, claiming that you are being censored is a great way to make money by getting your viewpoint out there. So, Marshall, it sounds like for folks who are in the military, in terms of that policy, they have the option to seek pre-review, to seek pre-clearance on some of this stuff, but not always required, and that's what he did. He kind of went ahead and then afterwards caught up with them.
You know, the military didn't point me to the right section of that policy, but I think I found the part where if it impacts your duties, like perhaps if people hear what you're saying, the people that are supposed to be under your command, and they may not agree with you, that could impact your duties. But if it's official military business, yeah, that has to go through spokespeople, and there's a chain of command there.
He's certainly selling a lot of books. Marshall, thank you. Hey, we're keeping an eye on the Loveland City Council meeting tonight because we expect an update on the Karen Garner case, the woman with dementia who was wrestled down by police for shoplifting. She was injured. They were later seen laughing about it on video. The lawyer for the 73-year-old says she was pretty badly hurt that day last summer. She's now suing. 3 of the Loveland police officers involved in the arrest have resigned. So we're going to listen in on this council meeting, bring any updates, significant ones on this case if they happen during this half hour. After that, it'll be on 9news.com or tonight at 9 and 10. Oh, it almost happened again today. Another Republican leader at the state capitol accidentally coming out in favor of gun control before backpedaling and asking for a redo. House Democrats would not allow the GOP minority leader in the House to undo his vote yesterday. Senate Minority Leader Chris Holbert got more grace prior to a recorded vote today.
Ask for an aye vote on Senate Bill 256.
You're out of time.
I asked. Yeah.
The minority leader will not be recognized. You've been at the mic twice. Minority Leader Holbert.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To clarify, I do ask for a no vote on Senate Bill 256. Yeah, no. A no vote. I understand there was actually a recorded vote across the way in the other chamber yesterday. Let's not get there.
It's nice to see him laugh instead of scream at each other. So Senator Holbert got a mulligan on it. House Minority Leader Hugh McCain yesterday could not shake his accidental vote for gun control because he could not get the 2/3 majority to redo the vote. Colorado's House delegation in Washington stood united today, Democrats and Republicans, in addressing anti-Asian hate crimes. Except Congresswoman Lauren Boebert, the Republican from the Western Slope, was the lone no vote on this out of Colorado. Boebert has echoed the former president's racial rhetoric, calling COVID-19 the China virus, and she was one of 62 no votes in the House today against a bipartisan bill to have the Justice Department expedite a review of hate crimes and to offer guidance to local law enforcement on reporting hate crimes. This bill easily passed the Senate as well. Missouri Senator Josh Hawley was the only no vote, so now it heads to President Biden for his signature.
Is this a Red Rocks concert already at full capacity early, or is it an optical illusion? Let's talk about how you feel about returning to crowds. Good to go? Still hesitant? And helicopters dropping mulch in Colorado's backcountry. They could landscape your yard in a second, but this is a much, much larger project. Next.
We're getting some feedback tonight about Red Rocks expanding to full capacity in June. Desiree emailed in after our story last night and was like, "What do you mean full capacity in June? It was packed full last weekend." She shared her photo looking back from the front row at the Lucero show. Humble brag. That looks like a lot of people. I mean, they're pretty well packed in there. Denver Arts and Venue insists that they only scanned 2,500 people for the show on Sunday, and capacity at Red Rocks is more than 9,000. So maybe this is just a version of a photo where like everybody crams into the middle so that they can be seen? The city insists this would look different if we could see the crowd from above. Which brings to mind the question, how is everybody feeling about crowds these days? I mean, I'll be honest, I'm vaxxed, my patience is taxed, and I'm ready to ditch the mask around other vaccinated people. But yet the thought of being in a big crowd like that, I don't know, it's just like, it makes me pause. I'm not even sure why. Where are you on this? You know, we're always looking for views, especially if they make us think a little bit differently. New angle on something. What is your feeling about being part of the crowd again? Any crowd. I read every email that comes to next@90news.com and every tweet with the hashtag #HeyNext. And as always, I'll share perspectives that get us thinking here. Community members who have dealt with SUNCOR's repeated air pollution violations in North Denver have now decided how they will spend $2.2 million of SUNCOR's money, which is paid up in a fine for that polluting. 5 projects have been selected, part of SUNCOR's $9 million settlement last year. There's air monitoring for the plant, new studies on health and environmental impacts, community ownership of some small parcels of land. They'll plant trees in neighborhoods nearby and also install a program to improve the air quality at nearby schools and a library.
Something we haven't seen in a while, clearing skies, blue skies and sunshine after another rainy day. This broad center of circulation finally on the move, headed for Nebraska and Kansas tonight. There'll still be some residual showers in southeastern Colorado, and the advisories for snow will cancel out within the hour. We'll be dealing with fog overnight and early tomorrow. It'll be a warmer and drier day with just enough moisture for an isolated late day storm. Tonight, clearing, showers ending. That fog will get us to 47. That's where we start tomorrow, up to 72. Partly sunny, a stray storm possible. We jump another 10 degrees Thursday, a storm possible Friday, and a beautiful weekend forecast with sunshine and highs in the mid-70s.
Want to quickly update you on what happened with the Karen Gardner case at the Loveland City Council meeting tonight. Your headline is, District Attorney and Fort Collins Police are going to jointly lead an investigation into what happened when Garner was arrested by Loveland Police last year. That outside investigation is expected to last anywhere from 8 months to a year. There's a Loveland Police internal investigation that was launched in April that won't wrap up for at least a month.
Diversity is resiliency, really, and that holds true in a lot of facets of society, but it also holds true in our ecosystem.
Here come some helpful humans as nature tries to recover from fire and do it before the floods hit. An inside look at a big project in the foothills. Next.
Nearly 5,000 acres of the Heil Valley Ranch in Boulder County burned in last year's Calwood fire. That land's going to recover with time and more quickly with human help.
Heil Valley Ranch is one of our most popular open space areas in North Boulder County near Lyons, and it was the location of about half of the Calwood fire. So our project right now is to try and stabilize the slopes and prevent erosion from happening in the monsoons. We really have a lot of work ahead of us to stabilize the soils, and it's going to mean a lot of contractors in here. It's going to mean helicopters flying and mulch dropping from the helicopters.
Using helicopters is about the only way to access a lot of this terrain since it's pretty steep and rugged. Most of these trees are hazard trees that have been removed from along our roads and trails. It's kind of a nice closed loop here that we can remove trees that are hazard, produce these wood shreds, and then we can then put on the slopes for hill slope stabilization.
We have targeted 1,500 acres for aerial mulching.
He's got to swing wide to gain enough altitude to get up to the top of the slope. We're doing about 5 tons an acre, so it's a lot of helicopter trips. It's really critical to get some cover on the slopes to prevent erosion, debris flows, flooding. The research has shown it's one of the single best things you can do in that critical first and second year after post-fire. Having the helicopters for the aerial for the immediate fire response and the defense, and then now for the recovery as well. Yeah, it points to how critical this resource is, this aerial resource. There he goes. Nice.
We are doing some fire recovery seeding today. And we're kind of entering into the burn area of these slopes now. Try and stabilize the slopes where it burned really hot and a lot of regrowth is not happening. The trees are completely torched, and when it gets to that point, that becomes really more devastating. The soils, they lose a lot of their organic matter. Diversity is resiliency, really. And that holds true in a lot of facets of society, but it also holds true in our ecosystems too. If you have a diverse landscape, you then will have a diverse wildlife population and suites of populations that helps to safeguard from different natural disasters. Going light on the seed.
Fire is an integral part of our ecosystem. And here in the Front Range, we've suppressed fire for the last 140 years. And so we have forests that are overgrown, that aren't used to fire, and that are unhealthy.
You know, we certainly cannot control Mother Nature by any means, but I think the more that we try to learn from Mother Nature and work with Mother Nature, the more successful we'll be at mitigating some damaging impacts from large-scale natural disasters, as well as stewarding these lands as best as possible.
Boulder County Open Space told our photojournalist Mike Grady they hope to reopen the southern portion of Ohio Valley Ranch September 30th. Kids' birthdays have returned to a most unlikely place, and you have a lot to say about returning to crowds. Next. The most Colorado thing we saw today is the state capitol, once again helping young women mark a milestone in life. Quinceañera photo shoots are back, the beautiful dresses splayed out over the grand staircases of the Capitol just like they were before the pandemic. Our thanks to the Post's Alex Burness for sharing this beautiful shot from above. He said there was another Quince photo shoot there yesterday, too. So many thoughtful responses from you about how you feel about crowds these days. Todd said, not getting back to normal life dishonors the science that made it possible. Carol Lee said, just got done with my cancer treatment. She says, I'm ready to get back out there. Joan, on the other hand, says she thinks they've rushed things. She said, maybe you would think differently if you've been on a ventilator for 30 days. Imagine I probably would, Joan. And then Steve said they were actually talking about this exact thing at the office the other day. He said, I think there's mild PTSD that we feel after months of responding to the fear of COVID by wearing masks. Steve writes, they made us feel more secure about our health. Now being told we don't need them creates some unease. It'll take some time to work through that. Appreciate your thoughtfulness. See you next time.